We welcome change and openness, for we believe that freedom and security go together, that the advance of human liberty can only strengthen the cause of world peace. There is one sign the Soviets can make that would be unmistakable, that would advance dramatically the cause of freedom and peace. General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
My name is Victoria Alexandrov, and my family and I moved to America 22 years ago. We moved to America because my father thought that it would give us better opportunities to have a good life. We were one out of only 3 or 4 families that were the first to come to Spokane, Washington. There wasn't a big community of Russians at that time. My parents encouraged us to speak Russian at home so we wouldn't lose our language and culture. We also attended a Russian Baptist church with multiple families like ourselves.
My name is Leonide Bергольцеве. I'm from Moscow, but not Idaho, from real Moscow. I decided to become a photographer when my dad printed my first pictures with the planes. I was very surprised to see real planes, not some points. Camera was very primitive. The lens was very ordinary, 50 millimeters, but nonetheless I could recognize the planes.
I have photographed since I was a little girl, and I would make photos of family moments. Later, when I was studying photography in college, I was encouraged to do a research project about Leonid. I first heard about Leonide Bергольцeve when I read about him in the newspaper. He was a very well-known photojournalist who was allowed to travel outside the Soviet Union and photograph world events. He is probably most well known for documenting the career of Nikita Khrushchev. His photographs were published in Life magazine, and he knew many of the great photojournalists of that era, including Henri Cartier-Bresson. He did a book on China. That is where he met a Spokane photographer, Don Hamilton, who invited him to visit Spokane. Over the last 2 years, I have gotten to know Leonid quite well. I would come and have tea with him every week, and he would tell stories about his life and his work, and how different it is here in Spokane from where he lived in Moscow. I visit him often because he has a lot to share with me about photography and about the Russia my parents left behind.
Everybody knows photography has some very different parts. One of them is photojournalism. I began to photograph And during the period in Russia when posed photography finished and real photography was growing up, and a little group of young photographers, including me, was a part of big exhibition of photography in 1958 in Moscow. All of us were amateurs or semi-amateurs that time. After that, maybe 75%, maybe more of us became famous photographers in the country because of photography of reality was growing up that time. All the students of universities that time in Russia had a special direction after graduating and had guaranteed place of job. When I got such a paper, I visited the office and told the general manager about my plans to be not engineer but photographer. I will remember that man until my finish, because really he decided my life way, my fate, or maybe something else. He told me, listen, boy, we have been working without general mechanic for 20 years. We'll do the same 20 years more. Go and make your pictures. During a year after that, I worked in with contracts, not in the staff, with some newspapers and magazines in Moscow. And daytime, I was running during Moscow and got pictures. In the evening time, I developed the films in bathroom. In night time, I printed pictures. In morning time, I ran around editorial boards and tried to sell the pictures. Sometimes they bought it, much more often not. In a year from my graduating, I was invited to the biggest magazine in the country. It was a magazine Soviet Union, published in 17 or 19 languages for all over the world. And I worked there during 14 years after that. After that, I became an independent photographer because my name was built during these 14 years. And I could work and I could live without any official office. The main manual of real photography for me was the Life magazine. When I was in the editorial board of Soviet Union magazine, we had a possibility to look at that. All the Western media was closed in Russia. But we could study that. I think because of that, I became a photographer. Всякое искусство условно. Оно не может и не должно 100% отражать натуру. Всякая живопись, всякая графика, даже всякая музыка, это все условно. Один понимает так, другой немножко иначе, третий. Черно-белая фотография в значительной степени отличается от натуры, гораздо больше отличается, чем цветная, потому что она не копирует цвет. Цвет не является главным. Точно так же, как мы, люди с сегодняшней культуры, не могут представить себе статую Венеры Милосской, допустим, цветной. Она белая. Хотя некоторые ученые говорят, что 2000 лет назад она была цветная. Не знаю. Черно-белая фотография гораздо большей степени искусства, нежели цветная. Цветная – это копия натуры. Копия – это не есть правда жизни. Совсем нет. Это из разных плоскостей понятия. Вот. Черная фотография гораздо ближе к искусству. Она, как мне кажется, она рождает больше мыслей и ответных эмоций у зрителя. Вот как было с этим портретом, я рассказывал. Как девочка бежала по выставке и кричала: «Мама, мама, посмотри, какой рыжий мальчик!» А он черно-белый, он никакой не рыжий. Ну, даже ребенок понял. Вот о чем речь. Поэтому, дело в том, что не все люди, умеющие рисовать, являются художниками. Точно так же, как не все люди, нажимающие на спуск камеры, являются фотографами. Людям нравится цветная фотография, она красивее. Возможно. Вам нравится цветная фотография? Флаг вам в руки, как говорится. Я знаю несколько примеров цветной фотографии, когда цвет является неотъемлемой частью этого произведения. Во всех остальных случаях мне представляется цвет лишний элементом. Он ничего мне не дает. Если эта фотография была бы с рыжими волосами, она не стала бы лучше. Мне кажется, что она стала бы хуже. То же самое с этой фотографией. Кто-то из них был в черном пальто, кто-то в синем, кто-то в коричневом. Если их всех раскрасить в эти цвета, она что будет, больше что-то означать? Ничего. Howard Sachurek Life with Whitman Basso, Newsweek. Moscow, 1958. He was very closely in acquaintance with Cartier-Bresson. And when Cartier-Bresson was in Moscow, Sachurek asked me to be with them. He presented me my first good camera. It was a very simple Asahi Pentax S. When you use a film camera, you know moving the film, distance, diaphragm, and speed. Only 4 things to be regulated by me. I can understand and explain almost everything in film photography. But when I look at Nikon D1X, only on the back of camera I see 10 or 12 knobs. What for? Who can tell me? Nobody can tell. Очень просто, я просто старался быть незаметным во время съемки событий, когда люди либо могли обращать на меня внимание, либо могли не обращать. Я старался, чтобы не обращали. Поэтому я никогда не вертелся в группе фотографов, которые снимали. Я всегда был где-то в другом месте. Вот, я всегда старался не использовать широкоугольный объектив, а старался использовать длиннофокусную оптику. Я не уверен, что фотографы Лайфа работали именно так. Но по результатам я стремился вот именно таким путем, чтобы на моих фотографиях отражалась реальная реальное происходящее, getting real life without posing. As to me, when I see posing person, I finish getting pictures, because posing face is absolutely not interesting for me. I think that's from life. That boys could make a real photography. One of the most interesting impressions of America, I can say, in America everybody knows everything, including photography, including foreign life, including everything. Because all of them, I think about photography not as a real art, not as a weapon for self-expressions, but only as an instrument to make money. Look at any American newspaper. What do you see? You see 75% of absolutely the same pictures, with different faces only. All of them are smiling, all of them are looking at the lens, all of them are waiting when the uncle pushes the knob. For whom such a picture is interesting? Only for these persons, for their relatives, and for their managers maybe, not for readers. Readers don't know all of these people, and their faces, only faces without any reality, are not absolutely interesting for anybody. The picture, a good picture, must have some action, some part of real life, maybe a little bit, but real life. Such a photography is died. Everybody has digital camera, everybody see the screen, everybody push the knob, everybody are photographers. But there is no photography. Очень просто. Вот телевидение сегодняшнее, оно снимает не реальную жизнь, оно снимает воображаемую жизнь. Вот то, что сейчас происходит, это имитация, это нереальная жизнь. Мне хочется быть фотогеничным. Я вижу свет, я вижу оператора, я вижу переводчика. Мне хочется быть очень красивым. Правильно? Да. А реальная жизнь совсем не такая. Да. Реальная жизнь... Я, например, флеш использовал, может быть, в 2% случаев за все 40 лет, что я снимал. Потому что как только вы пыхнули один раз, все, вы уже незаметным быть не можете ни при каких условиях, ни при какой компании. Contemporary TV is too visual, too visible. If I don't see you, I'm absolutely another. And you too, when I direct my camera on you. And she, the same. You may believe me, I'm an old wolf. In documentary photography, documentary movie, there is a lot of imitation, like life, but not real one. In my photography, there is no imitation at all. Even when some face looking directly to my lens. Look for them. It's it's impossible to make a kid to pose. Kid is kid. That's why I love to photograph kids a little bit more than adult people. Because from adult people, some moment you have a big risk. Excuse me.
Leonid came to America with the promise that he would be taken care of and that he would have a good life. He sold everything he owned to move here. The house he lived in was foreclosed, and today Leonid lives in a very small apartment with other elderly people. He has to take care of himself with very little. He mostly reads books and listens to classical music on the internet and doesn't photograph anymore.
I was born in Odessa. When I was 3, we moved to Moscow. Almost all my life was spent in Moscow. I lived in the same apartment during 58 years. Why I am in Spokane? In 1987, I was in China. In 1988, I was in China again. And there I met Don Hamilton. He is guilty in my presence here, after all. He was in Moscow, and we exchanged our books. His books about China, my books about China. After that, we drank very strongly. I could do that time. And unexpectedly, he asks me, Leonid, your wife and your daughter never been in the States? I said, no. It's not so popular in the communist country to travel around the world. If you are not a journalist, if you are not a member of parliament and so on and so on. Okay, I wrote, I gave, he flew to America. I forgot about that because I know so much what two drunk men can promise to each other. We went to Spokane, my wife, my daughter and me. I took some pictures to show. It was my first exhibition of photography in Spokane in 1990. There was some love between my daughter and the boy living in Spokane. So we went back Moscow, only my wife and me. My daughter lives here since that moment. In a couple of months after that, she mailed us some pictures of their marriage. And some years after that, she had here an interpreter office, very successful. She asked us, why are you staying here? Come to me. I asked her, who will feed us? I never worked for America. They must not to pay me pension. Oh, don't worry, she says. I'll feed you. Okay. I sold my apartment in 15 minutes of walking from the Kremlin. My apartment in Moscow was maybe 30 or 40% larger than this one. I transferred money to daughter. She paid for 2 houses, maybe in 200 yards between them. And we came after that. 6 years after that, her office was bankrupted because some very smart people here. That's why I'm in America. I have never wanted to leave Moscow. I knew I will have nothing to do here. I had no illusion. Вот почему я в основном снимаю свою внучку. Последние несколько лет я в основном снимаю свою внучку. вот, которую я обожаю, которая не понимает по-русски, а я не понимаю ее английский совершенно. Тем не менее, я ее обожаю, и каждый раз, когда я ее вижу, я ее всегда снимаю. Почему я перестал снимать? Не только потому, что я стал старый и никуда не годный. Главным образом, потому что здесь это никому не нужно. Вот. То, что я умею, или вернее умел делать, здесь просто никому не нужно. Первые пару лет, когда мы сюда переехали, я рассылал свое резюме по разным организациям, и у меня было 5 или 6, может быть, 7 интервью. Люди смотрели фотографии, смотрели мои книги, восторгались. Ах, как здорово, ах, как хорошо. У нас даже нет таких денег, чтобы платить такому мастеру. А я про деньги даже и не спрашивал. Вот. Но они все сходились на одном. Они, может быть, даже не были знакомы друг с другом, эти люди. Но они все заканчивали мой визит примерно одним и тем же текстом. Вы знаете, нам было бы очень лестно иметь ваше имя в нашем став-лист. Мы что-нибудь придумаем. Может быть, контракт, может, какие-нибудь разовые съемки. Мы вам на следующей неделе позвоним. Вот я лет 12 я уже жду, пока кто-нибудь из них позвонит.
I think it is unfortunate to have Leonid in America and not have his skills and abilities used for the benefit of our community. We need more photographers like Leonid. Life is becoming more fake. I think we create an image of a life that we want through materialism, but we don't ever really get it, whereas photojournalism has the power to show us the beauty of the real world and celebrates the life that we have. I think even the Russian culture in America is losing its authenticity. We are losing that identity that was once ours. As time passes, we grab onto things that don't define us, but define everyone. Leonid's work is important because it isn't staged or performed. It is real photography, and it is as if you have walked out into the street and you see this as naturally as if you were really there.
Maybe it'll not be so nice to hear for you Americans, but I think now in this country everybody who has a small soap camera thinks he or she is a real photographer. Я думаю, что это безусловно важно. Почему? Потому что если человечество сохранится еще несколько сотен лет, то о нас с вами, о нашем времени, люди будут судить прежде всего по фотографиям. Не по кино, не по телевидению, не по театру, не по DVD, а именно по фотографиям. И эти фотографии должны быть правдивыми. Они должны отражать реальность, а не фантазии фотографа. Вот. Люди, работающие в той фотографии, которой я посвятил свою жизнь, они работали, должны работать были, вернее, не для заказчика, а, так сказать, на будущее.
It is with a sense of some sadness that I have learned about my Russian heritage from the photographs Leonid has made. I don't think anyone who moves to a different country can stay who they were or fully become that new person who belongs to the culture of the country they have come to. Even though I come to America, I am not American, and I cannot remain completely Russian. There isn't really an adequate name for what we are. We invent a new culture that is stuck between what was and what is here now in America.
I've seen some 30 countries of the world. I know what is what. I know the people, any people must travel must see the world, and so on and so on. But people must live at home, not being a guest. Anyway, I can say if I knew 20 years ago or 16 years ago what could be with us in America, I would stay in Moscow. The man must live at home. Now the situation is not so simple. I cannot come back home because I have no home there. I'm already not Russian, and I'm not American yet, and will be never. I'm sitting between two chairs and will stay in such a position until the finish.
I hope people who watch this film will open their eyes to the people around them and recognize that the stranger among them has a life history and just may have talents and skills that could be of benefit to everyone.
But we bought a place on cemetery. We have the place for Finnish home in Spokane, not in Moscow.